Good morning. My name is Brant Steck. I'm Vice President at BUI, and on behalf of the entire BUI team, welcome. We're thrilled that you're here. I'm excited to introduce our speaker today, Ramona Neal, but before doing so, I have a couple of quick housekeeping items to address. Number one, this meeting is approved for 1 hour of continuing education credit for CFPs, for Missouri life and health agents, and Missouri attorneys. So if you're a CFP anywhere in the country, a Missouri life and health agent, or a Missouri attorney, as soon as I'm done with my comments, I'm going to put a link in the chat feature of this meeting. That's down at the bottom if you just hover your cursor. All you have to do is click on that link, enter your credentials, and we'll see to it that you get your credit. Please make sure you put the appropriate license or registration number so that we can efficiently get you your credit. Secondly, if you have questions throughout the presentation, please use that same chat feature and send those directly to me. There is a drop down that will default to everyone. Please send those questions to me, and then at the end of the meeting, I'll aggregate the questions and try to make the most efficient use of the question and answer period. Now, on to our meeting. Our presentation today is focused on long-term care insurance, but we're not going to focus on the need for long-term care insurance because really the statistics are overwhelming. If you need those statistics, email me and I can give you pages full of them. Our presentation today is focused on helping you feel more comfortable making appropriate recommendations to your clients. But you should know, through your partnership with BUI, you are not in it alone. We have a plethora of resources to help you be more comfortable with long-term care insurance planning. Number one, we have a long-term care evaluation process. It's a process that's dedicated to engage your clients to help identify their goals and objectives, their medical background, their family background, and where they want to receive care. And BUI's case design team will put together a customized proposal based upon their unique goals and objectives that directly alleviate their concerns and help them create the plan that's best for them. 9 times out of 10, there's somebody at BUI that's helping to run the meeting, helping field the questions, helping you feel most comfortable in the meeting and still being able to address the topic without feeling like you have to be the expert. Number two, we have client-facing seminars for long-term care, and we've done these very successfully for over a year. If you have a group of clients that you'd like to get together and introduce long-term care insurance, the need for care, and how the products work in general, we can help with the invitations. We can help with the speaker. We'll set up the Zoom meeting. All you have to do is invite your clients to the meeting, and we'll take it from there. And again, it's been a very successful program. We also have social media graphics that we can share that could be co-branded or just branded with your company's logo to share the statistics for long-term care insurance. You can put them out intermittently just to keep it in front of your clients that it's an important topic, but also let them know that you're a resource who can help them. Now, our meeting today isn't focused on traditional versus hybrid plans. Our meeting today is really focused on that hybrid product arena. So life insurance policies with long-term care insurance riders, which is the vast majority of the market today. What's a long-term care insurance rider, and what's a long-term care insurance rider with an extension of benefits? And then you have insurance companies saying, well, we have chronic illness riders that are basically the same, but some carriers are charging up front and some carriers are charging on the back end. And if you do nothing but read carrier material, it's nearly impossible to identify what's really in my client's best interest. So our speaker today, Ramona Neal, is an expert with life insurance policies with long-term care insurance riders. She is an industry veteran. She spent 28 years running the competitive intelligence at Nationwide. She's currently the president of the Living Benefit Review, which is an independent, impartial, competitive analysis service specifically reviewing life insurance policies with long-term care benefits. And I can tell you, you would be hard-pressed to find anyone anywhere who has a more robust understanding of these products and really somebody who can help you feel more comfortable about making appropriate, objective recommendations to your clients. So without further ado, Ramona Neal.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. And what a nice, heartfelt, warm introduction, Brant. I thank you and the rest of the BUI team. As he indicated, I'm Ramona Neal, president of Living Benefit Review. And just to reinforce, today I'm going to be speaking to long-term care life insurance solutions, specifically chronic illness riders. And there are two types of chronic illness riders. And as Brant said, we want to walk away understanding how they're different. It's absolutely critical that we understand the difference. So we're going to talk about the two types of chronic illness riders. We are going to talk about qualified long-term care riders. And we're going to talk about, as he indicated, the hybrid space, hybrid linked benefit products. Brant also said we would be focusing on long-term care life insurance solutions. So what that means is I'm excluding the hybrid products that are on an annuity chassis. And he also mentioned I'm not going to be speaking to traditional long-term care. So we're focused on long-term care life insurance solutions. I'm going to go ahead and turn the slideshow on here. So again, thank you for participating. Thank you for joining. And BUI, thank you for having me. From a disclosure perspective, this session is intended to be educational. So as we know, it is still your responsibility to do your own due diligence. Let's go ahead and take a look at the agenda. We're going to take a look at some industry sales trends. Then I'm going to walk you through the long-term care life insurance continuum to show you how robust some of the solutions can be. And then we're going to have some analogies. Which vessel are you offering to your clients? Are you offering chronic illness riders with upfront charges that have known and predictable benefits, or chronic illness riders where there is no charge until acceleration? Or are you offering long-term care riders in the hybrid linked benefit products? And I understand a number of the callers here have their CFP designation. And then as we all know, that designation is extremely highly valued and highly regarded in the industry. And within that context, we'll be talking about some best practices to consider in client applications. And then I'm going to end with the good and the bad. And what is the good and the bad? Well, all the rider solutions that we're going to discuss are good. None of them on their own are inherently bad. So my value proposition is that the problem isn't any of the riders. The problem is, are we adequately disclosing how they work, right? Because it depends on your client needs in terms of which rider solution is best. And as was mentioned earlier, BUI has a long-term care evaluation process that will help guide you through that. And not all BGAs have that level of expertise, I'm telling you. So if you have one that can assist you with that, that's a great, great advantage. All right, so we'll just, kind of table stakes and start off with some industry sales trends. If I were to ask an insurance professional, what has been the #1 trend in the life insurance industry in the last 15 years? They'd probably look me in the eye and say that it was Index UL. And from a product perspective, I agree. However, the #1 trend in the life insurance industry in the last 15 years, I contend are long-term care life insurance solutions. So chronic illness riders, long-term care riders, and the hybrid linked benefit products. And that is because those solutions transcend all product categories. You can find them on whole life, IUL, VUL. In some chronic illness riders, you can even find on the term insurance chassis. So what we're looking at here is from LIMRA, their combination sales for the first half of 2021. And if you take a look at the chart, what we're looking at is if a solution is being sold, whether it's a chronic illness, a long-term care rider, or a hybrid linked benefit product, in the first row, if we're looking by policy count, then 34% of the time it's on an IUL chassis, and 22% of the time it's on a term chassis. That's by policy count. The second row there would be by premium. So the point is, if this is not an area that you're focused on, this is a huge trend in the life insurance industry. And then, of course, when we consider the context of COVID, if this is not something that you're bringing to the table, perhaps your clients are actually asking about it. Let's see. All right, so what are we looking at here? Comparing trends between the various life insurance solutions. So if you look at the key at the bottom, in dark blue is the hybrid linked benefit products, asset-based with the extension of benefits. In dark green are chronic illness riders. And then in blue, light blue, we have long-term care riders. So when you look at the pie chart, what we're seeing is by far that chronic illness riders are the most common in the marketplace. So if a solution is being sold, 50% of the time by premium, it is a chronic illness rider. So they're very, very, you find them on whole life, IUL, VUL, very popular in the marketplace today. Let's take a look and do a further breakout of those chronic illness riders. So we've established that 50% of the time by premium, and that was per LIMRA's combination study. 50% of the time a chronic illness rider is being sold. But now, as we started off with, again, I just want to set the table. There are two types of chronic illness riders. Some of them have upfront charges, and some of them do not have a charge until the time of acceleration. As we see here with this pie chart, 86% of the time, there is no upfront charge. No upfront charge is also correlated to no underwriting. So to me, when I look at this pie chart, this causes me to ask you this question. If 86% of the time a chronic illness rider per LIMRA is being sold has no upfront charge, then that tells me 86% of the time clients are purchasing these solutions. So now the question is, and this is the point of today's session, well, what does that mean? So that's what we're going to take a look at. Before we dive in the various rider solutions, and then we'll have a nice example. Before we dive into the various rider solutions, let's just take a brief overview to understand a definition. First of all, on the bottom, I have a long-term care life insurance continuum. On the far right, you see most long-term care benefit. Those are the hybrid link benefit products with extension of benefit. I can get the most long-term care benefit if I'm purchasing a hybrid link benefit product. On the far left, I have chronic illness rider with no upfront charges. There I have an unknown amount that is eligible for acceleration. And then in the middle, I have those rider solutions with an upfront charge. And the hybrids also have an upfront charge, but in the middle, I have chronic illness riders with an upfront charge and the long-term care riders with an upfront charge. So how do I distinguish them? Just trying to do it in a quick sentence. The hybrid linked benefit products, extension of benefits. With those products, you are able to accelerate more than the actual death benefit. So let's say I buy a policy with a $300,000 death benefit. As we know, they have a second pool available that not only allows you to accelerate the entire 300,000, but allows you to accelerate that second pool. And that's why that second pool is the extension of benefit. So those are hybrid linked benefit products. I'm trying not to, I forgot to ask permission if I was allowed to name companies. So I won't, maybe I can do it in the Q&A. So those are the hybrid linked benefit products. Long-term care riders, that's the ability to accelerate the death benefit. They have upfront charges, known predictable benefits. If I have a $300,000 death benefit, I can accelerate the entire 300. Same thing with a chronic illness rider. I have a $300,000 death benefit, upfront charges, known predictable benefit. I can accelerate the entire benefit. When you have upfront charges, those are again correlated with underwriting. So that means that the rider could be rated. It means it could be declined, but you have a known predictable benefit. And then the chronic illness rider with no charge until acceleration. With those, and again, remember we looked at the pie chart, 86% of the time, if a chronic illness rider is being sold by premium per LIMRA, it's this type. Chronic illness rider with no charge until acceleration. How much can you accelerate? I don't know. You're going to be able to accelerate a portion of the death benefit. It depends. And those charges and the benefit are calculated at the time of claim, and there is a risk of a nominal payout. There's also a risk of no benefit at all. So from an analogy perspective, the question to you is, which solution are you offering to your clients today, or have you offered to your clients already that they've purchased? Are you offering them a canoe, a boat, a motorboat, or a yacht? And, which solution is best for your client? And then, of course, we know that answer is it depends on your client's needs, right? But I like having a picture because sometimes it's difficult to try to remember all the nuances. So having a picture associated with the solution, I think is going to be helpful. I think the underlying question that we need to ask ourselves and the value proposition of this entire session today is, if we don't know what type of rider we are offering to our clients, then how can our clients understand what they are purchasing, right? If we don't know what we're offering, then how can they know what to choose from? How can they possibly know? And if we are representing, because I've already established some of the upfront charges, you can accelerate the entire death benefit, chronic illness rider charge at acceleration, the amount that is eligible depends. If I am representing that they're all the same, and I represent that to my client, then what happens if my client goes to make a claim and thinks they can accelerate the entire 300,000 and finds out they can only accelerate a fraction? That's not good. So just a simple rule of thumb, if there is an upfront charge for the rider, those chronic illness rider, then you have known and predictable benefits. With ULs and VULs and IULs, those charges will come off on a monthly basis. With whole life, they come right off the premium every time a premium is set in. So let's start with the chronic illness riders with no upfront charge. Notice we're looking at a canoe here. On the continuum, lower left hand, in terms of how much LTC benefit or how much chronic illness benefit can be accelerated, some. I don't know how to define some. So if you have a chronic illness rider with no upfront charge, then the benefit amount and the charge are determined at the time of acceleration. And what does it depend on? Well, it depends on your age. It depends on your gender. It depends on the severity of the condition. It depends on if you're on a permanent chassis or a term chassis. It depends on the cash value. It depends on the company's discounting rate. So let's consider this fundamentally. If I don't know how much something costs, if you don't know how much something costs until you go on claim. So let's again say you have a $300,000 death benefit. If you don't know how much the rider costs until you go on claim, because it depends on the, those variables that I shared, severity of a condition being one of the crucial ones. If you don't know how much something costs, then isn't it logical that by definition, you don't know how much of a benefit is eligible to be accelerated? Is the cost 50 grand or is the cost 150 grand, right? And therein is the entire, the entire scenario. If the charge is not determined until you go on claim, and that charge varies based on numerous variables, then by definition, you can't possibly know how much of the benefit is eligible to accelerate. And we simply need to manage those expectations. So for example, I'm using 500,000 here, chronic illness rider. No charge until acceleration means you don't know what the benefit is until acceleration either. That's why I have the picture of a canoe. I'm not saying a canoe is bad. It's all about managing expectations. But the point here you can see very clearly, I'm offering my client a $500,000 death benefit, and how much will be eligible to accelerate? Could be 0. It could be 250. It could be 450. I can tell you one thing, it will not be 500. It can't be 500 because the insurance company has to charge you for the benefit, even if they charge you $1, right? And those charges vary based on all those factors that I mentioned. So I will add, sometimes with these chronic illness riders, we're all familiar with the LIRP scenario, life insurance retirement plan. Some consumers are interested in index UL or VUL and pushing as much cash in as they can to grow that cash value for no taxation while it grows, and withdrawing to cost basis, switching to loans, taking distributions. If that is their priority objective, they're solving for minimum non-MEC death benefit, focus on cash value to supplement retirement income. I got to tell you, sometimes this is the rider they're interested in because there's no upfront charge. They don't want a drag of charges to hinder their priority objective, which is cash value. Now, so again, it's not that any of the riders are bad, but in my opinion, it would be bad if I let my client walk away in the meeting thinking that with this type of rider, they could accelerate 500,000. They can't. So you just have to manage expectations. So these are chronic illness riders, no upfront charges. There's a lot of stats here. I included all of this so that you guys could go back and refer to it. One big thing that I'd like to point out is, let's see where I have that here. There towards the bottom, prohibited from being described and marketed as long-term care. Chronic illness riders are chronic illness riders. Some companies call them accelerated death benefits. Sometimes they have their own branded name. chronic illness riders are prohibited from being described or marketed as long-term care, period. So if we've been doing that, we need to stop doing that. We see they fall under a different section of the Internal Revenue Code. We've already established that they're the most prevalent in the market. I will also say sometimes a good fit for these is they do not have any underwriting. Often with an insurance company, they're automatically included with the policy. And even if, the client doesn't select that they want the rider benefit, they are automatically included up to a certain age or up to a certain table rating. So again, if your focus is on like the LERP sales application, this might be a good solution for you. There are two types of calculation methods for these no charge until acceleration. By far, the most prevalent is the discounting method, and that's the type I used in the example previously, where I said the discounting varies based on age, gender, cash value, severity of condition. So that's the most prevalent by far in the marketplace. But there's also a few companies that have a lien approach where they take a loan against the death benefit. And with those, I will say, you do actually have more of a known and predictable benefit. I'll just give you an example. So let's say I have a $500,000 death benefit and I'm with a company that has the lien method where there's no charge and benefit until I go on acceleration. With that company, I have a $500,000 death benefit. That company might say, you can access $250,000 for chronic illness, which is, that is known and predictable. But what is unknown, there's always an unknown portion, is what the remainder death benefit will be that the beneficiaries will receive, right? So they'll get you the $250,000 for the chronic illness expense, but now there's a compounding lien against the remainder death benefit. And depending on how long you live, it could be that you had a $500,000 death benefit, you accelerated $250,000. It could be that only $100,000 is remaining for your heirs upon death, that a death benefit of $100,000 is paid. It could be $50,000. It depends on how long you live. So those are chronic illness riders with no upfront charges. All right, what about chronic illness riders with upfront charges? These are the ones that were more in the 15% range. One thing that I give credit for these riders, again, is you have an upfront charge, known and predictable benefits. Even so, they are still prohibited from being defined and marketed as long-term care. So if we've been doing that, we need to stop. I'll also add, and if you look at the continuum there on the bottom, known and predictable benefits. So it's more robust than the other chronic illness, right? But I will also add, when we think about the state of Washington, the state of Washington did not allow chronic illness riders to meet the eligibility requirement to exempt them from the payroll tax. It had to be qualified, long-term care, whether it's traditional, the hybrid link benefit, or the LTC rider. But one thing I give these chronic illness riders credit for, upfront charges, known predictable benefits. So as you can see by the picture, we move from a canoe to a boat. In this example with the boat, chronic illness riders, yes, upfront charges, known predictable benefits. If I have a $500,000 death benefit, I can accelerate the entire $500,000 for chronic illness. I will add, there are a couple of companies in the marketplace that, as an example, they might require that 10% be set aside of that 500. So 50,000 be set aside as what they're referring to as a residual death benefit. And what they're saying is they will allow you to accelerate 450 for chronic illness, and the remaining 50 grand, they want to set aside as a final expense to pay your beneficiaries. So in my opinion, you're able to accelerate the entire 500,000 anyway, right? Known upfront charges, known predictable benefit, $500,000 death benefit. The majority of it you're able to accelerate for chronic illness. Some companies may require 5–10% that is left and set aside to cover the funeral expenses. Chronic illness riders with upfront charges, again, prohibited from being described or marketed as long-term care. It is not qualified long-term care, cannot do that. They do have upfront charges. The rider is underwritten. One thing I didn't really mention yet is take a look at what I've underlined there. appear less competitive on the illustrations versus the sister rider, those riders with no upfront charges. So let's say you're, a planner and you have two illustrations in front of you, and the base chassis are identical. And the only thing is different is that one chronic illness rider has upfront charges and the other has no charge until acceleration. If the base chassis are identical and you press calculate, then the one illustration that has the chronic illness rider with upfront charges, it's going to appear less competitive, right? Either it's going to have less cash value or the premium will be higher depending on what your solve assumptions were. And then if you don't know, and you're going to think, oh, the chronic illness riders are the same, you're going to select the chronic illness rider with no upfront charge because it illustrated better. And therein lies the issue, in my opinion, which is at the heart of the problem, is the chronic illness rider with no charge and no upfront charges, where it's determined at the time of acceleration. Those have grown so much in popularity. It's just an opinion here because they illustrate better. There were a lot of companies that had the long-term care riders with upfront charges or the chronic illness with upfront charges. And like the competitive example I was sharing with you, because some agents and planners may not know the difference. When they were in a competitive situation, they would lose the sale because their rider that had the more robust benefit had a charge to it, and that additional charge caused them to appear less competitive and they would lose the sale. So ultimately, at some point, perhaps when you look at the trend of the companies that offer the riders with no charge until acceleration, those have become so popular, maybe it's if you can't beat them, join them. All right, so this is important as well. And this gets back to how I began with, do your own due diligence. The illustration has a lot of information in there, and you can use the search functionality, the PDF search, to help you with that. But for the chronic illness riders in the marketplace, some of them still require the condition to be permanent and expected to last the rest of the insured's lifetime. Some of them, if you can believe this, only pay for nursing home care. And those tend to be the ones where there's no charge until acceleration. Some of them reserve the right to reduce the benefit to $500. So you bought $1 million death benefit. You've told the client the amount that you accelerate depends on severity of condition and age at the time of acceleration. But the insurance company can choose to reduce that benefit eligible. They can't reduce the death benefit, but they can reduce the amount that's eligible for acceleration for chronic illness. Some companies have a 2-year waiting period. Some companies, while you're on claim, require you to continue paying premiums. Some companies won't pay the benefit unless you've been in a nursing home for 6 months. On the right, we can take a look. Some of them have a 0-day elimination period. Some of them have 90 days. Some of them are calendar days. Some of them are service days. Some of them, if you have the option B death benefit, and the death benefit started off at 500 and it grew to 570, with some of them, the entire 570 can be accelerated for chronic illness, with some not. A handful of companies, if you've already sold an insurance policy, or excuse me, if you already offered a policy, your client already has an insurance policy, a handful of companies allow you to add a rider after the policy's been issued, of course, subject to underwriting. Some companies, and this is, with having so many planners on the line, sometimes we have wealthy global citizens, right? And some of these, for some of the clients, it's really important to have an international benefit. That varies significantly. Some companies offer international benefits, some do not. All right, so what I want to do here is, kind of reinforce the difference between the two types of chronic illness riders with an example, with a scenario. So we're looking at the chronic illness riders with upfront charges versus the chronic illness rider with charge at acceleration. So let's assume we have two sisters, and we'll just say Mary and Martha. They both bought a $500,000 index UL policy. They're both 30, so they're young. And let's assume that 15 years later, they both go on claim. So Mary and Martha both go on claim. $500,000 death benefit, they paid $3,000 premium. and it was an Index UL product. Number one is Mary. She bought the chronic illness rider with upfront charges. 15 years later, she goes on claim. How much is she able to accelerate? The entire $500,000 over 4 years. Now, to be fair, she had to be underwritten for the rider, and the cost of the rider was $2,100 cumulative cost over that 15 years. So these are real live illustrations that I ran. After she accelerates that 500 over that 4-year period, the policy is extinguished. Okay, so pretty good deal. She got the 500,000 as a living benefit. Number two, Martha, she paid $0 for the rider. There was no underwriting. I will also add, sometimes these are promoted as free. And as we can see by looking at the example with Martha, these chronic illness riders where the charge and benefit aren't determined until a time acceleration are most certainly not free. So she paid nothing for the rider all those years. So whereas Mary paid $2,100 during that period, she paid $0. She goes to accelerate, again, went to this company, got a real live illustration, and she's able to accelerate 195 grand. So free isn't actually free. It means her free rider, no upfront charge, cost her $305,000. So how we position this when we're meeting with our clients is important. Now, certainly if Martha is not happy, she doesn't have to accelerate, right? She can say, well, I'm not doing that. I'm going to keep my policy. And then she still has her $500,000 death benefit intact. But if she does accelerate and takes that $195,000, the policy is extinguished, and free means it costs $305,000. Now, from a footnote perspective, I do have to be fair and point out, I used a 30-year-old, right? So when I used Mary's cumulative rider charges that were only $2,100, if I had used a 50 or a 60-year-old, that rider charge would have been a lot more, right? And, so I'm just pointing out that I used a younger scenario here in this example. But the good news is you can run your own illustrations. Most of the insurance companies now allow you to illustrate going on claim. And I think that's something you certainly would do, and that is a best practice. All right, long-term care rider. Upfront charges, known and predictable benefit. And the good news is here, as the name would imply, a long-term care rider, yes, can be described and marketed as long-term care. Again, so we're talking motorboat here now, right? If you have a $500,000 death benefit, you can accelerate the entire $500,000 death benefit. And again, knowing that if the name in the market is long-term care rider, if I hear there's a long-term care rider, I already know that it has a robust benefit. An insurance company cannot call a rider long-term care rider unless it's a qualified long-term care rider. It means I already know you can accelerate the entire benefit to cover long-term care expenses. I will add, again, there are some companies that might, have a, residual benefit that's below that 500 that might say 10% to cover, to reserve and set aside 10% to cover final expenses. So accelerating 450, leaving 50,000 as a death benefit when the insured passes away. On the other hand, some companies have a residual death benefit on top of the 500. With the long-term care riders, they'll allow you to accelerate the entire 500,000 plus have an additional 5 or a 10% residual death benefit that will cover final expenses. Long-term care riders are under a different, section of the Internal Revenue Code. Section 7702B, they can be defined and marketed as long-term care. As we discussed in some of those examples, unfortunately, even though these are robust benefits, if a financial planner, an agent, and advisor may not be in touch with the differences of the riders, and if they're comparing a long-term care rider to some of the chronic illness riders, they may not illustrate as well. And so then if someone is just looking at the numbers, they may not choose the solution with a long-term care rider, even though it might be the right solution for the client. What's another issue is, which I think has caused these riders to I don't mean to say fall out of favor, but not to grow as much as the other solutions, is you do need a health license. I know it varies by state, but you need a health license, continuing education, and some agents don't like keeping up with that. However, take a look at this. Built-in consumer protections per the regulations, built-in consumer protections. Could chronic illness riders have that? I guess possibly, but it's been my experience with all these years in the insurance industry, 30 years, that an insurance company is not going to offer an additional robust benefit if it's not required by the regs. Long-term care riders, traditional long-term care, hybrid linked benefit products, anything that is considered qualified long-term care are required to have consumer protections. So what does that mean? You can take a look there. Unintentional lapse. So what unintentional lapse is, it allows it, at the time of application, you can determine an authorized representative so that if my policy is in danger of lapsing, the insurance company will notify an authorized representative, right? It's kind of important. So unintentional lapse, that's proactive to help prevent the policy from lapsing. How about this? Lapse protection while on claim. You're going to have these with long-term care riders, traditional long-term care, hybrid linked benefit products. So the policy is actually, you're actually on claim with a long-term care rider. You're on claim, you're not paying premiums, or the policy cash value has gone down to zero. The insurance company is prohibited from stopping those LTC benefits. While you are on claim, the insurance company has to continue paying the LTC benefit amount. So it guarantees the policy will not lapse while you are on claim. Now, footnote, there is some companies, per the model regs, go to the letter of the law, and they only provide that lapse protection if you're receiving facility care. Some companies, all level of care, facility care, assisted living, home health care. So, but the point is, no matter what happens with the underlying policy, including zero cash value, including not, paying premium, the insurance company will not lapse the policy while you're on claim. How about reinstatement provisions? So let's say the policy is already lapsed. Policy is already lapsed. We are within a 5-month window. If the policy has already lapsed and we're within a 5-month window, this is for the reinstatement provision, and it can be demonstrated that the insured had a cognitive impairment or a functional incapacity that prevented them from making the premium payments, then the policy can be reinstated without evidence of insurability. So the policy can be reinstated without any underwriting. Not just the long-term care rider component, the entire policy can be reinstated without evidence of insurability. Extension of benefits, it gets even better. So there's something to be said in the name of long-term care. If it can be long-term care, the company has to provide these additional benefits. In turn, you might have a higher price, but when you have a more robust benefit for the consumer, there is a benefit there as well. So extension of benefits. So the policy has already lapsed. Let's say it lapsed a couple of years ago. Policy has long since lapsed, 2-3 years ago. The son is rifling through his mother's files, and his mother had spent some time in a nursing home, and he sees that she had a life insurance policy that lapsed that had an LTC rider on it. And had they made a claim at that time, she could have gotten an LTC benefit. What this allows the policy owner to do is basically go back and look back and get the benefits that would have been eligible during that period. So if she would have been eligible to accelerate for 2 years while she was in a nursing home, it allows the policy owner to go back and capture 2 years of LTC benefits, even after the policy has expired. It does not do anything though for the life insurance death benefit, only for the amount that would have been eligible for long-term care. So again, qualified long-term care under Internal Revenue Code section 7702B is a big deal. There might be like 1 or 2, if you look at the footnotes, companies that are considered qualified long-term care, and they're able to accomplish this, if you look at the footnote, through 101G with the NAIC model regs. All right, let me see how we're doing on time. I think we're doing pretty good. All right, the last analogy that we were using is the yacht. So hybrid linked benefit products, asset-based, extension of benefits. Again, it's not that any of the solutions are bad, it's just understanding how they fit to meet client needs. A hybrid linked benefit product has upfront charges, it has known predictable benefits. These are often called combination products. It's literally life insurance married to long-term care combined. Life insurance married to long-term care. What makes them different from any other life insurance solution that we've discussed, including the qualified long-term care riders? So these qualified hybrid linked benefit products, what makes them different is the fact that you can receive benefits beyond the death benefit. So these policies, like I said, it's life insurance and long-term care married together. So if I have a $500,000 death benefit, I can accelerate the entire initial specified amount. Plus there is a second pool available, an extension of benefits, which is why I like using the term extension of benefits, because it clearly and precisely distinguishes them from any other life insurance solutions. So you're able to accelerate the initial specified amount plus an additional second pool, the extension of benefits. Another unique attribute for these hybrid linked benefit products is they have inflation options. Sometimes they can be 3%, 5% simple, compounding, but you're not going to find inflation options on any of the other life insurance solutions. On the continuum below, we see they have the most robust benefits. We started the session asking the question, what type of solution are we offering to our clients? Are we offering a solution where they can accelerate zero, or benefit for a lifetime, or somewhere in between? This is where this benefit for lifetime comes in. With the hybrid extension of benefits product, if I have a initial specified amount of $500,000 death benefit, I can already tell you, you will be able, if they meet the triggering eligibility requirements, as with the other companies, with the other examples, if you have 2 of the 6 ADLs or severe cognitive impairment, you go on claim, of course, you can accelerate the entire $500,000, but there could be a second pool of benefit available too. I just arbitrarily chose 800. That second pool of benefit might be worth an additional 200. So for a total of 700 as an example, right? The point is, you could accelerate the entire 500,000. You might be able to accelerate 500 plus 2 for 7. You might be able to accelerate 500 plus 300 for 8, or 500 plus 1 for 6. It depends on how the case is designed. It could be more than 800. And in the case with one company in the marketplace in the hybrid space, one company offers lifetime benefits. And as we think about that, lifetime benefits, that fits nicely when we think about dementia or Alzheimer's, right? Because those claims last beyond the expected 4 to 6 year period. So these are hybrid linked benefit products. Internal Revenue Code section 7702, you do need a license to sell. There is continuing education. There is the extension of benefits that you have available. This is a big one. I kind of spent a lot of time on the consumer protections with the LTC rider. The hybrid linked benefit products also have the consumer protections. So the lapse protection, so the reinstatement provisions, so all of those are still there available with the hybrid linked benefit products. All right, I think we're still doing okay on time. So these are just some examples of sales applications, all right? Client applications. Here are some examples for you to consider. On the left, we see the different solutions, and when the client comes to you, if a long-term care rider benefit is an important priority, and having those built-in consumer protections, then the LTC rider might be a good fit for your client, right? Obviously, if you're selling a life insurance product, there's a suitable need for life insurance. But if I'm in a meeting with a client and I'm meeting with them for 1 hour and they spend 45 minutes talking about long-term care or chronic illness, that would be a sign to me that that benefit is important and perhaps I should choose a more robust solution. Chronic illness riders with upfront charges, again, if I'm sitting in a meeting with a client and that having a known predictable benefit knowing that I can accelerate that entire 500,000 is important. I might offer a long-term care rider or a chronic illness rider. If I'm meeting with a client and they're indifferent to chronic illness, they say that their focus is to supplement retirement income, LRP is their priority. They don't believe they're ever going to go on claim. They don't want any additional riders that'll be a drag on their benefit. Then the chronic illness rider with no charge till acceleration might be a good fit. So there'd be no drag of charges. And at the time of claim, like Martha, they could still accelerate a portion, and the amount is what would be questionable. Chronic illness rider, where again, there's no charge, but it's the lien method. Those are a lot less popular. You're not going to find those very often in the marketplace. What is known is the chronic illness benefit, the upfront benefit. And the example I said is if you had 500,000, you might be able to accelerate 250 as the chronic illness benefit. But what is questionable is the lien with interest that is compounding against the remainder death benefit. And what is unknown is of the remaining 250, how much of it would be paid to your beneficiaries. And we already know it can't even be the remainder 250 because they got to charge you something, right? So will your beneficiaries upon your death get nothing? Will they get 50,000? Will they get 100? I don't know. All right. For those of you that have your CLTC designation, you can go on their website. I think I've already covered a lot of this in here. It's just some things to consider. Can the entire death benefit be accelerated? Some questions that you might want to consider. Do I need a health license and continuing education? Is the rider subject to underwriting? And then, as I said, with long-term care riders and the hybrid linked benefit, those have the built-in consumer protections. All right, in terms of best practices that I'd ask you to consider, and that is, it's just for learn the riders your clients are considering. I mean, that's really important. If we're going to have a discussion of different alternatives, we need to understand what we're sharing with them to help them make better decisions. Most of the companies today allow you to illustrate the riders. And in the case of BUI, they will help you. They have, as was indicated early on, they have a long-term care evaluation process that will help you. And they will certainly illustrate the rider when it's available. Sometimes they can illustrate, what happens if I go on claim at age 40 versus age 60 versus age 80, right? And so they can help you with the case design. And they'll help you with choosing which rider is a good fit for your client. And for us, I would say, I think this is, fundamentally at the heart of what we're doing is that we have to manage expectations on how these rider benefits pay out, especially for those where there is no charge until the time of acceleration. And again, that means because we don't know what the benefit will be. If you are personally alarmed, that is not the purpose of today's session. This is an educational session, but if you're personally alarmed about, what have I sold? What did I say? The only thing I'd ask you to consider is, we do annual reviews, right? You can do an annual review with your client. You can get an in-force illustration. And then, when you meet with your client, you can have a discussion of how that rider benefit works and then just document your files. So that can be done. And then as we started, I represented that all of the rider solutions are inherently good. None of them are bad. The problem isn't any of the riders. The problem is are we adequately representing and disclosing how they work? This is, just in my opinion, from an advisor perspective. If I'm selling life insurance, and again, it's an hour meeting, and I spend 50 minutes, 45 minutes talking about a chronic illness or a long-term care rider, if I'm selling life insurance, this is an opinion here, I need a suitable need for life insurance, right? And if I'm spending the entire time talking about long-term care, perhaps I should consider a more robust solution like a hybrid product, or you might want to consider a qualified long-term care. It's important that we know what type of rider solution that we are discussing with our clients. How about this one? When we consider, the once in a 100-year pandemic with COVID, how about we have clients that have, they're long haulers, they have issues, they would be eligible to go on claim. And they have some of these riders that have been, even if they've been no charge, they have a rider benefit that they could have accelerated. They could have lost their job. They could be able to accelerate the benefit and they don't even know that they have the solution. Of course, this is why those annual reviews are really important. I think that if a rider benefit is available, we certainly should make it a best practice to illustrate them. It helps to manage the expectations because some of the companies even go so far as to say, if you have a mild condition at age 60, then you can accelerate, 30%. If you have a moderate condition, it might be 50%. If you have a severe condition, it might be 70%. And, all those formulations and calculations vary by company. But if you can illustrate it, it's always helpful. And of course, that becomes part of the record with the client when you have worked with a solution with them. And then lastly, that last point I think is kind of a given, but let's just go ahead and say it. We looked at this with Mary and Martha. If you accelerate, in Mary's case, she accelerated the entire 500,000. Well, that means that the policy has been extinguished, right? And in Martha's case, she accelerated, what was it, 300,000? And the cost was 200,000. Well, the policy is still extinguished. So it's just clients understanding that if they bought a life insurance policy that they meant for their heirs and they accelerate the benefit for LTC or chronic illness riders, then it could mean there is nothing left for your beneficiaries. So as was stated, I'm Ramona Neal, Living Benefit Review. My email address and website information is there, livingbenefitreview.com. I think I'm going to turn it back over to Brant and see if we have some questions, and then we can go from there.
Perfect. Well,